What a day we've got. This is potentially the most people we've had on an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. For the record, we've got Kevin Ogar, Logan Aldridge, Chris Stoutenberg, and last but certainly not least, John Prescott. Now, first of all, welcome.
Thanks for having us, man. This is great.
Yeah,
There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of interrupting and talking over people, so this is going to be really annoying for people to listen to. But let's do this.
We'll do our best. I mean, those that listen know Fern interrupts me nonstop, so it won't be that much different for them to listen to this. But John, thanks for facilitating. We appreciate it. You got all these guys on here. My first question, and I think the question most people have when seeing the guest list and seeing the title of this episode is, what exactly is WheelWOD?
Great question. I think the guy who founded it should answer.
Yeah, I think that's a Stouty answer for sure.
Sure. So WheelWOD is a competition platform, and programming platform we built for adaptive athletes. It kind of came out of selfish needs of myself and a few other wheelies that were just looking for somewhere to do the open. So I started kind of adapting the open for a couple of the guys in wheelchairs, and that built the next year. Along came Kevin Ogar, who also wanted to be involved, and it grew even more. And then Logan Aldridge, who was like, hey, wait a minute, we want to do the open too, but we don't have wheelchairs. Can you program it for us as well? So it continued on, and then we started building, a bit of educational pieces, but really more of like try and test stuff. So, because like no one really had any blueprint for this. It was just like we had to kind of make it up as we go and see what worked and what didn't. And it's growing now to a really large competition platform, providing adaptive athletes places to compete, helping event organizers building competitions ourselves, and then providing programming for athletes that want to be competitive, but also athletes that just want to learn how to do it, and affiliates to go along with that.
And to be clear, it's more than simply competition. You put out daily programming now.
Yeah. We're trying to grow the movement to give, gym owners a chance to build their athletes, competitive or not, just giving them some tools to do that, but also individual athletes, trying to get them involved in the sport of functional fitness.
And how many different categories are there currently? If someone were to go online and they want to sign up for WheelWOD for their box, how many categories will they get?
So we have standing upper impairment, so someone like Logan, and I'll break it down in between above elbow amputation like Logan or below elbow. Standing lower impairment, which would be above knee amputees, below knee amputees, club foot, anything that's affecting your ability to stand in your lower limbs. And then neurological, so neuromuscular, CP, MS, could just be a brain injury. Seated, which would be seated 1 and seated 2, with hip function is seated 1, without hip function is seated 1, and with hip function is seated 2. So that seated 2 could include double leg amputees that work out in wheelchairs or in a seated position. Sensory, which is vision and hearing. And then who am I missing? Short stature, yeah.
Ackerman's group.
Your division.
Sign up for.
Yeah, your division. You'd have to show me some medical papers though to compete. But you could definitely follow the program. We have a lower wall ball target, which I feel is needed. I think it's fair. I honestly think wall balls should be set at height and weight by proportion to person.
I agree, 100%. Kevin, what do you want to say?
I was going to say, Ackerman, I think this is the first time in your life someone's going to say this to you. You're too tall
to ride this ride.
Category.
But you did mention a piece of paper. Is that normal? Is that what goes on? Like, in order to compete in an adaptive division, does somebody have to show up with a doctor's note or some sort of letter to prove it?
So we have developed that process. It currently didn't exist. So we do either classifications where we see you in person or on Zoom, take you through a section of movements like the Paralympics would do if you were going to play a Paralympic sport, or you can provide us with medical documentation as well to prove your injury. A lot of times you can see just in the movement. We have an initial classification process, which we go through, we give them a classification. If we see something different in competition when the field is live, their classification could change, because it's really easy to say, oh yeah, well, I can't do this and I can't do this. And all of a sudden when the heat of the moment's going on, they're like, wait a minute, he just did all the things he said he really actually couldn't do. And that's a big thing that happens in Paralympic sport as well. It's why you want to see it happen in the field of competition.
Have you seen that happen in CrossFit? As someone showed up to an event and said, I classify as X, and then in the middle of the workout, you're like, this dude or girl is lying, or maybe not even lying on purpose, but maybe they, just like, you see like those evangelist videos, do they just like stand up out of their chair like mid-workout? Like, you're blessed, and now I can do wall balls. Like, this is crazy.
We've seen like it's usually in a different situation, like in a seated classification where we're pretty sure they're a 2, but they're showing us and telling us that they're a seated 1 because they don't have hip function. And then we see the hip function happen when, they're not prepared for us to really realize what's going on. They have to get up and down out of their chair and they're trying to do it fast. And you notice, oh, he just tucked his legs underneath them and kind of used them to stand up.
So what does that look like for someone that doesn't know any better? What does hip function versus not hip function look like for wheelies?
Kevin, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I'm not hip function, so I'm a T11 paraplegic, and I think generally what you see is the lowest you're gonna go is like a T12. Jedediah Snelson, who's took second in the Open this year, is a T12, and he's about as low as you get before you start getting hip function or innervation of the hip. And it's more or less whenever you have control and or can leverage the musculature of your hip to aid you in the movement. Can you get a little hip pop? Can you use it to help you get back in a chair? Can you use it to get a little bit of a kip going? And what you're going to see more in seated 2 are people like Zach Rule is seated 2. He has hip function. He's a double amputee, but he does have some hip function. Tom Yazgo would be a seated 2. He has cerebral palsy that affects his lower half, but he can stand up and walk around a bit, but he just can't work out standing. So you're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, basically, if you have your legs under control even a little bit, even at your hip, like if you can kneel and stay balanced, you're probably a seated 2. Where if I were to move to the edge of my chair and try to press something overhead, I would fall. Jed would fall. Stouty would fall. If you're seated 2 and you have great, shut up, you're a freak.
But it sounds like it's a big advantage. We all know hip extension is like vital to CrossFit.
Yeah,
so
it's not even just the ability to extend the hip and use that for power. It's also balance. Like I'm saying, like if I sit on the edge of something and I press overhead, and even Stouty has the likelihood of falling over, even though he's really good at balance. You do. I'll push you over one of these days. But like
you gain, like, in other words, Stouty, are you and Kevin the same?
Yeah, until we start breaking it down, like seated 1 has high and low, and I'm a low and he's a high. So we break it off at T6, which tends to have a lot of abdominal function. So I have abdominal function for the most part, and where Stouty does not. So he'd be considered seated 1 high, and I'd be considered seated 1 low.
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
And I think
Seated is more the easy one. Wait until you get into the neuros.
Well, and I want to hear what Logan has to say, but I mean, I would imagine every workout that you guys are adapting takes a very long time. I mean, hours. And I think what's really important to remember, it's no different than when CrossFit started. You go back to 2001, Coach Glassman was like, choose a weight and do this and do that. And now it's evolved to Fran is 95 or Diane is 225. I would imagine you guys are 20 years later going through a lot of those same learning curves. Logan, what were you going to add?
I was just going to, on your question about the difference, I think that's a really good question, especially from the perspective of an able-bodied individual. It's easy to be, to simulate impairments and try to see what that might feel like for the athlete. You can, for instance, myself, put an arm behind your back and try to do a workout one-armed and get a sense for what my workouts may feel like. For the differentiation in seated 1 and 2, it's really important. and maybe overlooked from the able-bodied perspective, because you can't really simulate what it's like to be without hip function. You can have your conceptual idea of understanding what that athlete experiences with pressing, but there's a lot, like Kevin was just mentioning, with core function and stuff. So yeah, I think it's really important, and it's a good question to ask and for us to explain a bit more detail, because there's a balance between additional divisions and making sure people fit into a category that can be competitive. And I think WheelWOD's done a really good job at monitoring when it's appropriate to add that next division or to add the specificities within the division. And I hope listeners understand, because they might start to think in their own head, well, if that's the case, well then upper extremity, there's so many different types of condition impairments. No two individuals are the same. Well, shouldn't there be an upper extremity neurological single side condition division? And you're right, there really should, but we have to get the population to that size before we can justify those divisions. And it's really cool to see that it is to the size where we can have this many divisions. And I think generally speaking, we'll never cover all the divisions, but we'll cover some that allow individuals to identify where their eligibility falls into the appropriate division.
Well, and it all comes down to advantages and disadvantages, and it's the same thing within able-bodied CrossFit competitions. When I was competing standing up, I'm 6'3". I have a lot of disadvantages opposed to someone who's 5'8" when it comes to squat, the depth of a squat or how fast I can move a barbell cycle through clean and jerk. And I feel like what we've been able to come up with is a nice representation of that same thing, where Logan, as an upper above the elbow amputee, may have some disadvantages with certain movements. We've corrected, or as close as we can correct for that, to make it fairly even. But then he also has some advantages in other movements, and so there's all a bunch of pluses and minuses, and I think it all comes out in the wash as far as how well we program for that kind of stuff.
It makes a big difference in the program. The program, all of a sudden, in a CrossFit gym, I can be like, you want to get a good workout? Well, let's do 30 squats, 20 push-ups, 10 pull-ups, cycle it through for a bit. We'll get a good workout. Maybe you get a run in. That's all good and fun, and you'll get it. But you have to really understand the impairment and what the disadvantages. When you get into neuromuscular and things that start to break down as people get fatigued, other symptoms start to show up. You need to understand that. You can't just be like, oh yeah, well, you'll do the same as they will, because it's going to have a whole different effect. It could have a negative effect. It might not be a gain in fitness. It could be a really fall back in fitness. So understanding where those things happen and how athletes can crash and how overuse can happen to a single arm is huge. So the program changes what your outlook on things are way more than anything else.
Well, and I had a conversation recently with Dave Hippensteel, who was one of the best masters athletes, and CrossFit just added another age category. And again, the age categories have probably been around 7-8 years at this point, and they're realizing, hey, they added the 35, now they've added the 65 plus. I mean, this is still early, and I know, there's always going to be people complaining, and people need to stop and recognize, hey, these guys are doing their best and they're learning. I have an idea. I'm going to throw it out there. And then, John, I do want to hear from you about something, but you mentioned, Logan, it's hard to test that lack of hip function. I got an idea. I think this is going to go over really well in the WheelWOD community. So you have to eat a lot of ice cream and beans, and you have to do a workout, but you can't shit yourself. If you shit yourself, you're using your hips. So, in other words, you're basically stopping yourself from trying to contract the midline, midline stability. If you guys want to use that, I will allow it. I will allow that to be the test. Called the Ackerman test.
One of the ways I've explained
God.
pressing for a seated athlete is someone who's a high seated athlete like Stouty would be sitting on a yoga ball and trying to press something overhead without your feet being on the ground.
Yep, without shitting yourself, of course.
Without shitting yourself.
Nah.
And so like me, who's lower in the injury, mine would be pressing something overhead while sitting on a Bosu ball, while someone with hip function would just be someone sitting on a bench and pressing overhead. So the stability in those three categories really, really represents how hard it is to balance and press or move for a seated high, low, or hip function.
You know what, Kevin, that's good and great. I'm going to go with the shit test. And
Yeah.
if you poop yourself, you're trying to use your abs. That's
You're
really
trying too hard.
You're trying too hard. So, John, you are unique in this group.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You're able-bodied. Is that the right term?
For unless you count any mental, deficiencies that I have. But yes, overall, I would
You
say
and
I'm
I-
fairly able-bodied.
You and I will be in that same category.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, what that process does look like. We hear from these guys.
Yeah. I think, to take it, like peel it back a little bit to know where I kind of fold into it is like, I'm a gym owner, and I had a very cool opportunity for Logan one day, just walked into the gym and he was like, hey, like, I'm an adaptive athlete. And I was like, and this is something I think all gym owners need to understand. And it actually brings a very strong line of credibility to why Stouty started creating the programming downline that we have for affiliates. Like, I had absolutely no idea how to coach an adaptive athlete. And it wasn't until Logan made me realize that we gym owners are doing a very poor job of being prepared for an athlete. Like, you can't just say, I can't help you. Like, if that's the way that you treat somebody who's in a wheelchair, then how do you treat your people who aren't, right? Like, I just can't help you. So when he walked in, it was a lot of learning, and he introduced me to Stouty and introduced me to Wadapalooza, which at the time was, it was a very small competition. It was, Logan invited me to go down with him. He wanted to throw down and see what it was all about.
The adaptive
Yeah.
portion.
Yep. Yeah. They, so Guido had worked, in previous years with putting, as Logan likes to call it, a hand clapping event, where people can sort of just support the vision of bringing adaptive. And it was great. And I
Remember,
to
it's like
this
on
day,
like a little stage, kind of removed. It wasn't as
right.
well.
These
wanted-
good job. You guys are doing exercise.
8
right?
people competed. Stouty, is that what you said?
In all forms. Like, so there was a short stature, Kevin, double leg amputee, standing with like one arm, standing with missing a leg. So
Right,
no-
and at the same time too, like not
Yeah.
individual. Yeah.
yeah, and it was kind of just do whatever they could do.
Yeah.
And people could see it.
But from my perspective, from the outside looking in, I was brought into this, hey, like Stouty was like, hey, you look like you want to help. Like, come on, you seem pretty cool. So I kind of started helping them, but watching the evolution of the event itself. And this is framework that I still carry to this day. And I tell every adaptive athlete, because like Logan basically started a brush fire here at the gym for competitive adaptive athletes. Like, all my adaptive athletes want to be first place. There's no, like, they want to be the best, period. But what Logan helped me even understand better is there was 8 people in an event that now has about 600 people registered to compete for. And that's a time span of like 7 years, right? So it's the idea that what they are representing is the opportunity to grow inside of a sport that never really had that much of a traction. And how do you gain a competition into that? Like, how do you and what it's looked like from my vision is seeing Stouty, Kevin, and Logan, and numerous other athletes taking the programming and learning how can you actually make a competitive program? Because you identified the problem. Everybody has their own variation of need. So how do we streamline a competition that allows everyone to demonstrate their abilities, not their disabilities, right? And I always go back, because Logan made me think these, like, I know I'm only the 11th athlete at this competition, but next year there'll be 20. And the following year, there'll be 30. And now what's happened as a result of that mindset, and I have to remind Sean Eberly of this all the time. He's a short statured athlete. He's one of 8 people on earth who have this condition. There's not going to be a huge athlete pool. But if you stay in it and all of a sudden people start to see it, and that's exactly what's happened. And now there is a short stature division with athletes who can compete for that division. So alongside of the evolution of the programming, which I think is only going to happen as the athlete pool continues to grow, is just the athlete pool creating a competitive platform, which actually, WheelWOD has done a pretty cool job of doing. So I'm definitely more on the outside of it, looking at it as a gym owner. I obviously don't have adaptations to those needs. So learning how to coach these athletes, that is, to my point as a gym owner, it's the most important thing that you should be doing. Like, if you're not learning, then you're not doing a service to your community. And as soon as my coaches all know this stuff now, we have adaptive athletes. I just had another one walk in yesterday. She's a full-on quadriplegic neurologic athlete. We're going to work with her. She's going to be awesome because she can.
And she
I
walked
don't want to
in?
be she didn't walk in.
She did not.
Okay.
She did not. I said that wrong.
Just being clear, because I was like, that's impressive if you did that already.
We already got her to walk in.
I love what you're saying too. First of all, I love Sean. Shout out to Sean. I know he's listening. He's my super fan. I'm pretty sure there's, single white female type stuff happening about me. Sean. But what I love about what you guys are doing is, and correct me if I'm wrong. I can't speak from this perspective. Logan, I know you were young, right? Kevin Stouty. This is getting people that potentially would not have that competitive outlet to compete on a daily basis, not just when they go to Wadapalooza, but you're giving them the opportunity to go to a box too, because the more people that learn about this, like John, who's probably got the preeminent adaptive box in the country. I don't know if that's true. I just, if you guys that are listening don't know John, check out News River CrossFit, and you'll see you have
You got like
wide
15 right
variety.
now, 15 or 16
15, I
adaptive
mean,
athletes.
I would argue most boxes have one or two, right? If that. But
I
now
can't take the credit for that, man. Logan, like, he's so handsome, and then they walk in and they're like, "Where's that handsome one-arm fella?" And then that's that. They're locked in. 10-year contract. They're already in.
whatever it takes. But people have. It's no different than CrossFit. Years ago, I asked Coach Glassman, why do you only put the best athletes on .com? This is going way back when, and he was like, because you can only trickle down, you can't trickle up. Richard Simmons is never going to coach the best athletes in the world because no one looks at Richard Simmons like that. And I assume it's the same here, right? By throwing out this competitiveness, all of a sudden it can trickle down, and people are realizing I can do this too, and they're showing up around the world to join CrossFit affiliates.
Yeah. In the competition aspect, every year there's all of a sudden like a group of athletes that we haven't seen. And now we're starting to see Paralympians going like, ooh, this is a good off season, or I'm done. The way I found CrossFit was done competing in the Paralympics and was looking for something to stay competitive, but not, playing rec ball, where it's like just not the same. You go from the Paralympics to playing rec basketball and feel competitive. You're just like, this isn't that fun. So CrossFit was what I found. And that's what I was like, oh, this is great. Now I just got to find people to compete against. It's the same thing. We're seeing athletes come out every year. You're like, where did this person come from? Holy crap. Look at this. And they're just learning, and they're just fresh, and they just have athletic ability that's incredible, that you're like, okay, they just need a coach. They get a coach and somebody that starts to give them direction. They're going to be incredible. Do
you have 2 gold medals, Stouty? Is that true?
Yeah. 2 Olympic gold medals, one silver Olympic medal, and then 1 world championship gold and 1 bronze, and an MVP of the world.
You have 3 Olympic medals from 3 different years.
Yeah.
Like, so you played at least for 8 years.
So I did 2000, 2004, 2008, and then I retired in 2010.
And you're wearing those medals now, is that right? Under your shirt?
They're actually in a box in the basement.
So from what I've heard, the Olympics is like really like a party. Is it the same for the Paralympics? Like,
yeah, especially
for
done. For me, it's not the same because we play day 1 and we play day 15. So if we go to the gold medal games, but the teams that get knocked out, they're out. But for me, there's no party. You see the party, and like, there's sprinters that are there. They run 2 races on the first 2 days. Their Paralympic experience is over, and they just party.
Just get wasted for the next 2, because you stay in the village, right? For those that don't know, the Paralympics typically follows right after the Olympics, right? Same village, same everything. Yeah. Kevin, what's that, Stouty?
It's just a bunch of sexy people that are in shape and been cooped up for 4 years looking to release.
But I'm going to ask I want to hear from Kevin about going, but being in a wheelchair, when you get drunk, like, what happens?
You can't walk straight.
I've been really drunk, college drunk, and you're just like, you're slurring your words, you're falling down. Like, I would imagine you just fall asleep.
You see people pass out face first on a table or flip over backwards.
I was just going to say, I didn't want to say any names, but I've seen 2 wheelchair athletes drunk flip backwards in their chair. So
are they both on this call right now?
Neither one of them are in this call. Kevin fell, but he wasn't drunk, and that was just funny.
Yeah, I was stone cold sober and flipped backwards.
You know what usually the cause of the guy in the wheelchair flipping over backwards is not the guy in the wheelchair. The drunk people are around him that think they want to jump on his lap and give him a hug. So I catch you because I don't want you to fall. All your momentum's going into me. It's either I can just like shoulder you and just let you fall as you go by, or I got to grab you and then we're both going down. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Kevin, are you still training for competition right now?
I retired from the para powerlifting team. We had some disagreements on some things, and so I retired from that. Who knows? I've been asked about like the cross country team and the biathlon team. I may play around with those, but as of right now,
Country team. What is? I mean, like a 5K?
Yeah, like skiing.
Really?
Yeah.
Nordic skiing.
Quite a shift.
He would crush it. He would win if he did it.
It's ridiculous.
It's a lot like it's a lot like CrossFit, man. It's just like how well can you suffer, and then the biathlon is how well can you suffer for a very short period of time, get your heart rate back down, and fire a gun. And I grew up in Missouri. I got the gun part down.
So you think, Logan? You think if Kevin decides to shift sports, he would literally be a gold medalist?
Yeah, I competed in Nordic skiing. I went to nationals and participated, and I know the seated guys, and nobody trains the skier like adaptive CrossFit athletes, and that is exactly what is the modality of cross country seated skiing.
The reason I got asked is because I did a seated marathon ski erg and a half marathon ski erg, and
I just want to jump in. I want you to let that sit for a second. He skied a marathon with no legs.
Well, as you guys are saying that, and I'm thinking about it, go back to that hip conversation. People that don't use the skier properly are probably not using enough hips, but there's still a tremendous amount of hips. I mean, that just must blow you up.
It's insane.
I mean,
It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
it definitely can. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love the ski erg.
And that's why he's as wide as a door frame.
Possibly. Yeah.
That and the best.
Yeah, I mean,
that is just for those listening who might work with seated athletes, that is the go-to conditioning equipment. They get to pull. They get to pull a lot. And that's awesome. They push all the time. So it's really good.
The reverse motion that we do in a chair every day, so it's really good for shoulders. And it's one of the only ways I found to really spike my heart rate like I used to with sprints. Like rowing, and that's also on me because I'm just not that good at rowing, and I don't have the long arms like Stouty, so pushing I'm not that fast at. So ski erg's kind of my go-to.
when you're in a wheelchair, do you feel your immune system is boosted? And I say that because you use your hands on your wheels. I'm just asking a serious question, John. This is something I think about, right? So is your immune system boosted because you're exposing yourself to more germs?
Are you asking us if we're better than everyone else? Then the answer is yes, absolutely.
Well, you're fitter than me, that is for sure, Kevin. But I mean, you have to be aware of that. This is a serious question. You have to be aware of that.
I wash my hands a lot. That's about it.
I do want to say, Jason, and this is something that Logan taught me really well. Like, people are so afraid to ask people about their impairment. Like, it's like a very non-casual piece of content. And what I've learned in the last 5 years, these guys will tell you anything. In fact, more than I've ever wanted to know has come out of Kevin Ogar's mouth. And I know you other two know what I'm talking about. But I think the bigger message is like, first of all, you have a relationship with your athlete. You should be comfortable enough to ask them serious questions. Just because they are not in a wheelchair, do I need to know that they have a cardiac history? Absolutely. That medical stuff's important. So don't be afraid to ask. Like, they will. I mean, there's a difference between being an asshole about it and actually asking a true question. I don't know which one you were going with there, Jason, but the point is.
No, I think you're absolutely right, John. Having all of you guys have been on the podcast before, as well as Alec. You guys know Alec, and one thing that you guys have taught me, not just from an adaptive perspective, one thing I learned is from all of you is like, hey, just ask. People get really worked up. I don't want to offend, and it's more offensive not to ask. And I think that's just me personally. Like, I will ask you anything because I know I'm not trying to offend you. I'm truly curious, and I think that's the best thing you can do for all. Going back to all this, this shouldn't matter if you come in a wheelchair, or you come in with one arm, or you come in at 5'3" like I do. Like, ask me questions, get to know me better.
I think it comes down to intent, man. And this is what I've always said. Like, being an adaptive athlete doesn't preclude you from being an asshole.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, but like if your intent is to ask a question to help them out or be better, and you're not trying to be rude about it, and they snap back at you because they get offended for some weird reason because you didn't use the exact right term, that's on them. That's not on you. If I come in, you ask me about my impairment, and I snap at you for asking, like that makes me the asshole. It's not you being the asshole. If you if you say the word disability or handicapped or I know some people get really upset about saying someone's in a wheelchair opposed to uses a wheelchair. If they get offended by that because they want to be offended, that's on them. That's not on you.
Well, and it's just for them. They got to learn how to, if they're offended by it, they have to educate. So you have to say, I prefer if you said it this way, or I don't really feel comfortable talking about that right at the moment. Maybe, down the line here, maybe we can get into that. Let's move forward on the stuff that we need to talk about, what's important. But that's just people, right? Just, you got to be a person. It doesn't matter if you're sitting down, standing up, missing an arm, doesn't matter. We're all people.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments was, and you were there, Stouty, on the WOD on the Waves. There was a guy in a wheelchair, and he was just kind of watching me lead a huge workout with Patrick Bellner, terrible coach, good athlete. But, I was running the workout, and the guy's just watching. And if it was somebody just standing there watching, I would have been like, come on in. So why would it be any different? I was like, dude, come on in. He left the workout like that. I wasn't sure how some of these people were finding the boat because they weren't CrossFitters, but he left that workout and he was like, that was amazing. And if I would have felt weird asking him to join, he may never have been exposed to CrossFit.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
Logan, you've been quiet over there. Talk to me
Yeah,
about what's been going on. I mean, I know you're a big deal. You're on like Ellen and all sorts of things. So if you don't want, if you're trying to hot shot us, big shot us, that's fine. I get it.
No, none of that. None of that. I want the listeners to understand the big picture, the 10,000 foot view of why this matters and why it's relevant to them. The reason this is all applicable to CrossFit is because CrossFit embodies what it means to be like universally accessible. Its benefits benefit your life in the most profound functional way. So how does it not, it's a no-brainer that the opportunity for folks with disabilities, people with impairments, to benefit from the CrossFit methodology is clear. We all know that. All these listeners know that. So I think there's a ton of value in what WheelWOD is trying to do. Yeah, we talk competition stuff and specifics and all that. But like you mentioned, or you alluded to earlier, there's a trickle-down effect that is the priority. And that is there shouldn't be a difference between what the expectation is of an adaptive athlete coming to a CrossFit gym for the first time, and an able-bodied individual coming to a CrossFit gym for the first time. Onboarding should be similar. We're teaching what a CrossFit class looks like. We're teaching what the workout looks like. And WheelWOD takes out the biggest struggle. Now you, as the coach or as the owner, can instill the mentality, the mindset, the aura of this is no big deal. You're another human being coming to join our group fitness class. You don't have to view it as, okay, now you're an adaptive. I got to ask all these questions. I need to understand a lot more. These are the questions you're asking anybody coming into your fitness class. And now the WheelWOD offerings allow you to not have to go into the thick of the weeds of how am I changing this? How am I modifying, customizing the workout for you? Now you are inclusion to the core, because it's a part of your daily offering, whether they show up or not. You have seated versions, upper versions, lower versions. You have the WheelWOD workout. Programming is taken out of it. And I think something that we haven't mentioned very clearly on here is WheelWOD is able-bodied program. I mean, yes, affiliate program, but it is able-bodied individual competitive programming. Stouty took an individual to the CrossFit Games from Omar. Stouty, where is he from?
Venezuela.
Brazil? Venezuela, that's right. He was doing WheelWOD programming. Actually, Stouty was programming almost the same thing for me, making the adjustments for a one point of contact athlete. So doing very similar volume to this guy. And that's when I truly believe that was the fittest I've ever been in my life. That's when I went to the WheelWOD Games in Collingwood in 2019 and won. But that same year, Stouty was the coach. He was in the athlete prep area at the CrossFit Games. And to me, that was incredibly profound, because Stouty's not just a great wheelchair coach. He's not just a great adaptive athlete coach. He knows how to program. He knows his shit, and he knows the people. He's talked to the people, and he has the ability to make anyone pursue their fitness. And also, he's been running an affiliate. He has a 10-year plus affiliate, and he's been doing the programming there. So I think we fall into a pigeonhole. The premise of this whole podcast, everyone listening, it's all about adaptive, and yes, it is, but it's all about people. It's all about people doing fitness together. That's all that it's about. And there's value, and there's pros and cons to the name of this group being WheelWOD, right? There's pros because you quickly know if you're an individual in a wheelchair, you identify, there's camaraderie, there's a place for you to belong. But more importantly, how cool would it be to be synonymous with, doing any other programming? Individuals with all of their limbs say, yeah, I'm a WheelWOD athlete. And it's like, whoa, wait a second, you don't have any disability. It's because that's not the point. The point is everyone can do fitness. It is universal in its application and in the way it's delivered. And I think that's what is so important in the next 10 years. That's where WheelWOD should go. Yes, it should allow Paralympians and the adaptive competition to thrive and to be a professional athlete as an adaptive athlete if you want, but it also should bridge the gap, and there'd be no difference between pursuing your fitness and now you're learning through experience. You go to a class and you're in a class and you understand the benefit of deadlifting more, I believe, when you see the adapted version for somebody who has CP, the adapted version for a wheelchair athlete. Now you get the context of why you deadlift as an able-bodied individual this way. And I think you appreciate the fact that you can move in this way, and you appreciate how universal this application of fitness is, because that person can do it too. That person can do it too, very different than you. And that's camaraderie, that's psychological health. And that's then the fitness comes with it.
I love it, Logan. And I don't currently own an affiliate, but I can tell you if I did, I would do my damnedest to get as many adaptive athletes in there, because no one opens a CrossFit to be like, oh, I want to train the top of the best, the best of the best. And we do it to change people's lives. And typically that looks more like someone's going through a hard time. They're getting divorced, or this, they need to lose 100 pounds. What's more rewarding than helping people that, 5 years ago didn't have this avenue and this opportunity? And you could make a huge impact, on someone's life. I'm sure when someone is first injured, when they're just getting acclimated to being an adaptive athlete, I would guess it's a very hard time in someone's life.
I'll say I had a very awesome experience as a coach to an adaptive athlete, and she is right-sided stroke. She started coming to us. Now Neuse River's been on the WheelWOD track affiliate programming for 2 years. And
That's
I'm going on 3.
The woman I know, I forget her name. What's her name?
The woman that you know?
That's who you're talking about right now.
You met her, Nicole.
Yeah. Okay.
So she's right-sided neuro, and she came in and she stroke, unable to pick up her right arm over her head. And when she came in, she said, because you always ask your athlete, why are you here? What is your goal in being here? What would you like us to help you accomplish? And she said very pointed, she goes, I want to drive a car again. I'm 32 years old. I haven't driven a car in 4 years because of my stroke. And at the time, she could not pick her arm up. She physically could not move it. And within about 6 months, just by following the neurologic downline of, walk, crawl, run, or crawl, walk, run rather, she is not only able to hold a barbell over her head with both hands, but she can drive a car. And for me personally, that is the summary of why I got into this business in the first place. It happened to me when I walked into your gym, Jason, and now we cyclically get to get that, but we can't limit it to you have all your limbs and everything works, right? You have to expose yourself to that vulnerability of learning.
I think a big part of why all of us fell in love with CrossFit and why we do this through CrossFit is there are a ton of Paralympic sports, adaptive sports, they're out there, but they put you around, and this is not a bad thing, but they put you around people you're already comfortable with because you're always with people who have the same impairment. One of the things I love most about being able to run a class with wheelies, people with CP, TBIs, loss of limb, and all that in one go is because the disability is forgotten and the person is remembered. And so I have a lot of times where people are like, I completely forgot that you were in a wheelchair. they don't see it anymore. They see a human being because they had to interact. And what's even cooler to that, like I do work with the Craig Hospital that's close by, and they bring people who are usually 6 weeks or less out from spinal cord injury or traumatic brain injury to my gym to work out. And we've had a few who like literally would never go anywhere besides home or the hospital, and they would just kind of like seclude themselves, and they got them to start coming to the gym, and now they live a full life where they're going out and around people because they were so scared to be around able-bodied people or go out in public, or they didn't have the confidence for it. And so like the fitness part is awesome, and being able to be stronger and move better is great, but the mental aspect of no longer fearing the world and being willing to go out into the world because you're so used to being around people who aren't like you is beyond awesome to me.
So remind me again, how many different categories are there, Stouty?
So there's 8. There's more than 8. And even this WheelWOD games coming up, we have the stage 1, which is like the kind of like the regionals. We've split it into 12 because I wanted to split upper and lower into 2 divisions. And I wanted
in November, right? That's the WheelWOD games is in November 12th to 14th.
We've taken them down from like 1,000 to 400, and in June 4th to 6th, they'll have 4 workouts online that they'll have to do, at a standard video. We'll take them down to the top 10, basically. So we're gonna,
for each category.
And then in November we'll go to rally and have the games. So we're at 12 right now. We're at 12 divisions because I separated, just trying to get it as fair as possible at this elite level. Is like, I want guys with above knee amputations competing against guys with above knee amputations. I want guys with above elbow amputations competing against each other. And same with, I want major neuro versus major neuro, minor versus minor. I just want to see that I get the luxury of doing that because I'm the guy that's running it. So I can just say, yeah, we're going to do more. We're going to add some more divisions, and that's the way it's going to go. I've been programming them as subcategories as it is. So it's a huge jump for us. Like, this is a big jump to throw another, what is it? 6 divisions in when you look at male and female in there. But I think it's completely worth it. And really just wanted to quickly touch on what Logan was saying with the programming. As an adaptive athlete, for me, when I first started CrossFit, I come in and it was great. Scott Thornton was my coach. He was the owner of the gym that I own now. He was like, whatever, let's just do whatever. Like, it's crazy. And every day he was excited because he was trying to think of crazy things, of ways to like adapt things. But at some point in time, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I've been doing all this stuff, and I can't compare anything on the board to anybody else. I'm like, oh, I did that workout, but I did it completely different. And then I started talking to other guys in chairs, and they're like, well, I would have done it this way. And I wanted to standardize it in a program so that when you come in your gym and Jason does Fran at 95 pull-ups, and I do Fran at 65 and pull-ups where my feet are on the floor, because it's, first of all, safety, but also like I'm doing strict pull-ups, you're doing kipping pull-ups more at the top level. But I'm going to finish in about 315. That's where my fitness level is. That is a good gauge where.
No need to brag, Stouty. We get it. You're fit.
You'd be under 3, right? You'd be sub 3.
Of course, yes.
So, but that's what I mean. So like, that's where we're at. But that, to me, then I look at the program when I open my blog for my gym. I'm like, oh, the seated workout. Okay, sweet. And I get to put my score up, and it's not modified or scaled or whatever. I'm in the mix, and I get to feel like, I'm like, yeah, man, you did that at your capabilities, and I did it at mine. And these are my RXs. Not having like that little RX being taken away from adaptive athletes because they didn't do it exactly the way it's supposed to. That's a mental mindfuck. Like, it just upstairs.
I've had that conversation numerous times with people, and when you always say the word scaling, it's like, no, we're not, this is important for people that haven't heard those old episodes. There's a big difference between scaling and adapting. And to be clear, you can scale an adaptive workout.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We provide all the scaling for the RX movements.
Tell me, so one of the big issues at a box, I'm sure you guys have all dealt with it, is someone will inevitably click RX when they didn't go RX, and then the other members lose their minds. How's that work in the adaptive world? Do you guys do the same thing? Do you hear the same complaints?
Same thing.
He's towing into a dark conversation.
No, it's no different than it's the exact same. I've owned a gym for a long time now, and I'm like, I got the athlete that's like, he wasn't doing double unders the whole way. The adaptive athletes do the same thing. He's like, no, man, he wasn't doing that to standard. That wasn't the standard. That's
He's not really that paralyzed. Come on. He's got an elbow. I love that. Well, he's got an elbow and that guy doesn't have it. And you're like, okay, guy, go try and do one of those. You can use both your fucking elbows. I challenge you to do one.
So right now you're saying there's 12. If you kind of had to forecast, like in 10 years from now, how many categories do you think there's going to be one day?
I would go to 16. I have 16 in my head that I can see. That would be separating the quadriplegics for sure. They've got to have their own, them being in seated one, even on a multi-limb subcategory, it's just never going to match up. Like they can't get in and out of their wheelchairs the same. We have to really reduce programming or really change programming and you lose that, like apples versus apples. Now it becomes apples and oranges again. So I suppose
I'm going to throw out a 17th, and I think there should be a 5'3" and below, right? Just so
short stature high.
Short stature. Oh, I like it. That makes me feel better too. That makes me feel.
Games athletes.
You could call it like the Clydesdale short statures.
Yeah, I like that, Logan. Yes, I do like short stature high, right? Up to 5'3", 5 foot to 5'3", and then short stature low is like your Mikeys and your Sean's.
Mm-hmm.
And I do question Sean. I think he might be short stature high.
He is.
He's cheating. Speaking of cheaters, we got to throw Sean in there. So,
did you see his muscle up?
I saw that.
Dude's a monster.
Yeah. First, and it's funny, and I want to give Sean credit on that. He has been working on it for quite some time, and we've gone through a whole bunch of skill progression stuff, and he's been on it. Like he'll come in and he'll do it. And then he finished it, and we were just kind of sitting around the whiteboard, and I was like, hey man, are you the first short statured person to ever do a bar muscle up? Because as far as I know. So I thought that was really cool. I mean,
that's really freaking cool.
Yeah, it's super cool.
I mean, and I'm the first short stature high.
Yes.
Do it. So you said you eventually going to have 17 classes. How many are there in the Olympics?
Oh, it's by sport, right? So
yeah, depends on what sport you're talking about.
Wheelchair basketball goes from class 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and they have to figure out a lineup that makes 15 classification points out of 5 guys at a time.
It's like Motorball. Like if you saw the movie Motorball, you can only have so many points on the
wheelchair basketball. Then track is like, it goes on forever. Track is like, it breaks down to
uppers, lowers, seated. You have all of those, and within those, there's
like
T9, T46, yeah,
Q and quads, and it's crazy. So track and field is probably where the most divisions. Swimming's pretty intense. Swimming's got I think like 25, 28 divisions. Just because again, like having an elbow, not having an elbow in a swimming race is a lot of an advantage. That's an extra little dolphin wing that's kicking around.
And it's one thing that you're doing. It's one thing. So you have to be laser focused on eligibility.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was gonna say. I don't want to downplay Kevin's role and Logan's role or John's role, but Stouty, there's like a shit ton of weight on your shoulders. Is that true? I mean, am I just making this up? I mean, everybody else just nodded their head in agreement, but hearing this, I'm like, this is like the godfather of adaptive fitness. And I would imagine you get a lot of the praise, but you also get a lot of the, what the fuck? I don't have an elbow, like John's saying. And it's a lot. How do you handle that?
I'm always open. Like I run workouts on Saturdays, Zoom workouts, and I spend 15 minutes after free workouts. Any adaptive athlete, like this past one, I had guys from South Africa jump in, and I ask them at the end, I'm like, yo man, like what did you think? Where did you feel? Did you feel like that was a disadvantage? I see them. I can be like, that's a fitness problem. This isn't an adaptive problem. That's a fitness problem. That's why you're slower. But I'm very open with that. And I'll say like, man, like you're just You're going to get stronger, you get fitter, you'll get better. Don't worry. This is not an adaptive problem. Then I'll look and say, yeah, we need to make an adjustment. I get called all sorts of shit. I don't care. I'll call them it right back because I'm not.
You realize, okay, that's the thing. And all of a sudden you're like, fuck, now I need 18 categories. Now I need 20.
No, it just has to be adjusted in the program. So like they're still in the right spot. It's just like, okay, that is a significant disadvantage in a classification that we have right now. So I can be like, that is way too much of a disadvantage. That's not fitness. That's just the fact that the program isn't built to it. So it could be like, hey, we're going to do 100 thrusters for time, and Logan and Casey are going to be in the same spot. Has to be a dumbbell. It has to be a one arm test with 2 legs. And we have to take the other limb out of the play for that workout to get that right test. So most of the time, but yeah, no, I went to the Paralympics every year. Every time I went to the Paralympics, I was like, what is that? What? You see the guy on the skateboard with a foot growing out of his butt? Like, what was that? Because everything's different, right? Like when you start getting into like just birth defects and rare diseases, people are like, oh, I'm like one of 5 people in the world that have this disease. You're like,
Make me a division.
I'm like, shit. You're
I
probably
think too, Jason, one thing that
probably aren't very fit, so you probably could win that division.
I think Stouty will always underplay some of the architecture at a competition. I know it's easy for Kevin and Logan to speak on it because they've competed within the competitions that he's helped curate. And I think for me and Kevin, we're a lot more supporting staff to that vision now. You know, Kevin will handle floor judging at a competition. I'm more of athlete relations and logistics. But like, if you consider for a second, and we'll just use WAZA because it's the most forward facing. When we do the WheelWOD games, that's it'll be at New Server this year. It's at the gym. It's not really a spectator environment. It's more of a, this is us throwing down if people want to watch.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to talk to Firm. We got to be there this year.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Just to be clear, November 12th to 14th in Raleigh at News River CrossFit. WheelWOD game.
Yep. But when you start to really break it down and you look at, and Logan and Casey are a great example, right? So he's using the one arm, one movement kind of mantra.
I don't know.
When you break Casey Acree, he's just a very fit competitor against Logan in the one arm space.
Fiercest rival, Logan?
No doubt. Yeah, he's below elbow.
So he's missing his arm from here. This part's gone.
Listen, this is important to mention. Casey did the adaptive open upper, and he did the able-bodied open as a below elbow amputee. He qualified. He went on to the semis. Yeah. He competed in the semis. He was top 10. He was the top 10% and he did not come in last place.
No, I just want to, he kind of cheated on the dumbbell snatch workout. Right? Am I right? Like you can't do that.
No. I mean, that's appropriate. That's appropriate for you to say, but to his credit,
it's faster to not switch.
He timed. He had a guy, his training partner, who has both of his arms, cycle a series of alternating dumbbell snatches, and then he had a standard where he had to touch it to his residual limb, the distal end of his residual limb, passing through. By making that his standard, his timing was the same as somebody cycling.
But did they let him go on? Did they let him go on in the actual competition?
No, he didn't move on from there. He didn't qualify for.
But he got past. He went to the whatever.
Yeah, he went to the semis.
I think Ackerman just thinks that he's not as fit. I think he's reflecting inward on his own lack of fitness.
No. For the record, I believe that is fitness, but it's a different movement, which is exactly why WheelWOD and the adaptive programming exists, right? Because you will have assholes like me calling this dude out, saying you're cheating, even though he's 1,000 spots ahead of me. And what about the pull-ups?
He uses a strap. I mean, he does. Yeah, he anchors at the elbow.
He's cheating. Just making. Okay.
So cheat is what I heard.
Yeah, I'm gonna use this next year too, guys. It's short stature high. I'm gonna qualify short stature high and in the open. So what were you saying, John?
Yeah, I know. I was just gonna kind of comment on when you look at an event where you have 15 athletes going at one time and you have all different variations of limitations or adaptations. You're looking at a roadmap of a floor that has 15 different equipment assignments, 15 judging differentiations, but inside of that, there is standardization. So the complexities of having these events is something that I think Stouty and Kevin and Logan and all of the people who have supported WheelWOD throughout the years have done a fantastic job doing. But I think that right now we're in that crux of the breakout, right? Like, I think the CrossFit Open did a great job of exposing the need for adaptive athletics to be infused inside of, and WheelWOD has done the responsibility of making sure that these athletes have a safe place to do their competitions, as well as programming that will offset your athletes' needs inside of the gym. So it's a really interesting thing, and I think Stouty plays it down a lot. He doesn't really, he just is like, this is life, you know, the way he always is with everything. But it's a very complicated task, which is why, you know, to bring in the other events that we're working with, and we'll use the Bacon Beatdown as our next kind of highlight event. Like, they came to us because they knew this is a very complicated task. You know, we want the people who know what the hell they're doing to come in and kind of help.
I think
I'm not gonna play it off like it's easy by any means, but I also put a lot of, like, these guys are being on the modest side. I put a lot of heat on them as well, right? I'm like, Kevin, like, here's the movements, you got the standards. You make sure every judge on that floor that may have never judged, like somewhere like Wadapalooza, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I've never judged an adaptive athlete. I was like, you make sure that that person is actually doing what they're supposed to do. And if they're not doing it, you need to wheel in and say like, hey, no, that's a no rep. We got to re-go. And John, like I drop on him. I'm like, here's what the floor looks like, dude. These are the barbell setups. You make sure all the people that are ready to roll in the workout horses do what they're supposed to do. And make sure that they're set up. I can't be like, oh, we have a 4-minute transition because the elite athletes are right after us and be 10 minutes. It happened to us twice. And both times I'm like, I'm going to strangle somebody. I'm like so upset, right? Because I'm like, I'd want us to be looked at as like professional and we know what we're doing and we do know what we're doing. And, you know, there's always going to be hiccups and competitions fall behind, but I don't want it to be because, they look at it and be like, oh, it's falling behind because the adaptive guys are in here. So I put a lot of that heat like on John and be like, this will be your fault, man. You're going to hear about this for 4 years. 4 years. I'm going to talk about this until.
Remember workout 3 in 2017, Waza Games.
But if you want to be recognized at the same level that CrossFit, just the standard division is, you have to be, you know, at the same level as them for everything. Kevin, what's the equivalent active recovery position in a wheelchair? So mid-workout, I'm always like this, like bent over, hands on my knees. What happens in a wheelchair? Where do you go when you're trying to rest?
You lean in, you just kind of curl up into a little ball as much as you can. It's like the fetal position, but in a chair.
Gotcha. All right.
I try to do this. Because my lungs are partially paralyzed. So if I do this, I'm like getting nothing. I'm just like, so I try to I look like I'm just bellied out. I'm like, oh.
But that's really what you should be doing in a standard division too. You should not be bent over.
Yeah.
You should be, that's why like wrestling, like stand up, hands on your head.
Yeah.
So we should be taking that from you, Statty. That's a good tip right there.
So, yeah, well, lose part of your lung capacity, paralyze it for a bit, get someone to stick a needle in there, take the half part out, you'll learn quick.
But immediately as you're saying that, I'm like, that's a division too, right? You have to consider that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when someone's judging an adaptive competition, in other words, I've judged the CrossFit Games. Will I have an easy transition to judge, or will it be like?
No, it's the difference. The difference in judging is that like when we roll in, and this is the speech I give to like when I've run judging at Wadapalooza and whatnot and whatever else, is that people just don't want to no rep cripples. Like that's the bottom line. They're like,
do I have to edit that word out?
You can't say you can't use that term. Kevin
cripples. Am I not supposed to say cripples? Yeah. Okay. Cripples is not a good word to say. Cripples. Sorry, got it. So they don't want to know up these athletes because they're inspirational or they're trying really hard, and that is a downright insult to their athletitism.
That is more of an insult than using the C word, as far as I'm hearing, right? Because it's like you're gonna no rep Tia, and if she's a freaking inspiration, right? No different than Sean is.
I mean, look, Logan is a monster of an athlete. And to tell him that he can get away with whatever he wants to because he is missing an arm is a direct insult to his character and to his athleticism. And so if you know what you're looking for, like we set out the standards very, very clearly. If this doesn't happen, this is a no rep. If they don't have a pre-approved, hey, they can't get this range of motion, they need to hit that range of motion, and that's on them. And if they don't hit it, then it's a no rep. And the biggest thing you have to think about is like, and I've had people come up to me like, I just don't want to judge this division. I can't no rep someone who's missing a leg. And I'm like, well, then cool, go judge someone else. Get out of your feelings. We'll bring someone else in who will. Because it's people internalizing how hard it probably is for them, and wanting, if they were in the same situation, wanting an easy way out. These athletes that are competing don't want the easy way out.
Well,
They want to show you what they're worth.
Kevin, as you know from being on staff, it's relative intensity too, right? I mean, it's no different. You know rep a muscle up on Tia while she's in the middle of Amanda. That's an expensive no rep. No, doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair, one arm, whatever's going on. It's relative intensity. That's the beauty of CrossFit right there.
I mean, I've had people, me and Johnny have had people threaten us because we no rep some of their athletes. Shoulder to overhead means shoulder to overhead, not chin to overhead. I don't care that you're missing a leg. It's.
I also think too, that starts at the top. That's the way you should coach all of your athletes, period, full stop, doesn't matter. And that's the way, like, and I referenced Logan again, but like, he actually made me kind of have the empathy in that space where, cause I'm always like, I'm a gym owner. Our currency is empathy, not money. We're idiots. We only want to help people all the time. But he was like, I want to be held to a standard. Like, don't hold me back because you think I can't. And when that kind of got into my brain, now when somebody walks in the door who's an adaptive athlete, the very first thing I tell them is, you're an athlete here. You're nothing else. You're just another person coming through the door who has limitations, just like everybody else who comes through the door. So let's figure out what your limitations are. And that's how we start.
You know what that sounds like? We work with a lot of affiliates that are afraid to raise their rates. And it's, you're projecting on me. And it's the same thing here. You're projecting on them, maybe because you're not willing to work as hard as Logan, or maybe because you don't want to be no rep and you want to get away with that, lack of range of motion or whatever it is. But yeah, the standard becomes the standard, right?
That's right.
So speaking from Kevin, we heard it, Logan, I think it's important that the listeners who maybe haven't had the opportunity to work with an adaptive athlete hear it. So Logan, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very exciting, Logan. Thank you. It was like a big moment in the episode. It was like really important.
I've been patiently holding my tongue. Thank you for giving me the mic, Jason. Hopefully your listeners are still listening. This is a ridiculous podcast. Nobody's listening to this. Who cares about adaptive competition? But listen, let's make it relevant. Let's bring it back. Why do people listen to this podcast? Are they affiliate owners? And if so, do they want more members in their gym?
Yes and yes. And coaches. Good. Just standard. Good. I think a lot of people, we get a lot of, level 1 trainers, level 2, which is, they do this because they love it. And I think like me, again, to quote Coach Glassman from years ago, he's like, I wouldn't cross the street to watch a 2-minute Fran, right? But I would cross the street to help someone improve their air squat. And I think that's why we do this. We do this because we want to help people. And if you're not only welcoming adaptive athletes, but purposefully seeking them out, and that kind of is where I want to go before we wrap up. Logan, Kevin, Stouty, John, how can people that are listening because they're owning an affiliate or coaching an affiliate get more? Because I would imagine, yes, John, you have 15, or Kevin, someone, or Stouty, or even Logan, people walk in and you have that kind of connection, right? For me to grab the guy that was sitting watching, like I had to really convince him, like, no, you can do this. So how do we expand that in our community? How do we get more people involved that are, that are adaptive athletes?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I wanted to, I wanted to follow up from your yeses. So those listeners, those affiliate owners, understand if you're in the US, let me give you some statistics. 1 in 4 people live with a permanent physical impairment. That's wow. 61 million people. That's 1 in 4. It's 25% of the United States population. Globally, it's 15%, which is still pretty significant. About 1 billion people. So why is it when we're in the grocery store, do we not see 1 in 4 people with a disability? Do we not see 1 in 4 wheelchair users, amputees, difference in function?
Let me answer. Let me guess.
Yeah.
Because they don't either feel comfortable or have the ability to be there. Like they don't have the right van or whatever, to get out of the house.
Environmental barriers to entry. That's ultimately what it is, societally, culturally. All right. So we are looking at a specific aspect of living life, which is your ability to accomplish tasks, live independently for people with disabilities. And if you're saying 1 in 4 people are that way and we don't see them out in the world, that's because barriers of entry. They're stuck at home. Now we're going to equip affiliates, CrossFit gyms, which we know are where lives are changed, with the programming, the knowledge to offer, say, you are welcomed here. The workout is written every day, tailored towards and for you, as well as able-bodied folks. There's no difference. We have all of the options here in-house. That in and of itself will get your able-bodied members more excited to talk about they're a part of an affiliate that is the ultimate inclusive and accessible facility. Makes them feel good, makes them look good to go to a big dinner and say, yeah, well, I go to this gym that also, helps people with different impairments. There's this guy in a wheelchair who bench presses 450 pounds, guy with one arm climbing rope. It's incredible. And now those people at the dinner are like, what? That's happening at that gym? I gotta go check this out. If you're an affiliate owner, this is the way to grow your affiliate. This is the way to get one adaptive athlete in your door and then to become the spokesperson, the face. And I appreciate John saying that give me credit for what has happened at Neuse River, but I can't take that credit because it's a part of the WheelWOD momentum. It's a part of, me being a part of that gym, me wanting to advocate and reach out as much as I can in the Raleigh community, but also the next member, once they come in there, they're the leader. They're the next one to recruit the next. Like all of the Christies, the Seans, the Shanes, all of these members who have been adaptive athletes at Neuse River for years, I'm not the leader. They're leaders. They're all voicing it and bringing in new individuals that are able-bodied folks. And I think that's a really powerful message. I think we all know in our heart of hearts, it's good to support adaptive athletes. It's the right thing to do. Might not make us money, but it's the right thing to do. No, let's talk business. It will make you money. It will make you a lot of money as affiliate owner if you do it right and you treat all humans as humans. You don't treat adaptive athletes as up on a pedestal. They don't need to pay a membership. Oh, no, they're just great and hand clap. No, they're a member. You need to reduce their limitations, increase their work capacity, and give them a better quality of life. You do that, and I guarantee you'll get more able-bodied members and you'll grow your affiliate. You can do all that for $100 a month with WheelWOD affiliate programming. So that's the secret to what we're offering. That is the trickle-down effect to then getting people into competitions, to then getting people into Wadapalooza and into all the different opportunities for fitness, going on to the Paralympics. This is not meant to just make you an elite CrossFit athlete. I think WheelWOD is meant to make you realize that you're far more capable than you realized, and you can go pursue whatever you want.
And to touch on that, it's going to, I don't know, John and Kevin, I know you guys know, but I know the other gyms that follow affiliate programming, make sure able-bodied athletes more honest with themselves and they'll come forward with injuries because they say, oh, there's like an option. I tweaked my knee last week. I'm like, good. We can do this workout seated. We can do this workout with a, above knee limitation. So let's continue keeping you training and address that injury. And I have the way for you to do it. You don't want to be, your foot's been bugging you. You got plantar fasciitis. Let's do a couple workouts a week seated. So
the biggest thing, and this is not just adaptive athletes, this is all athletes, is that all athletes come to your gym not because they think you're the smartest or necessarily even the best. They come to your gym because they know that you care about them. And Jason, I would argue that the hard part for able-bodied people to coach adaptive athletes isn't because they don't know how to do it, because they're trying to convince them of the wrong thing. They're trying to convince them that they know what they're doing, not convincing them that they care about the person. And basic human psychology, how do you let someone know that you care about them? Is you put thought behind them. You text your friends, you call people who you think are having a hard time. The beauty of the WheelWOD programming and that you can have at the affiliate is that you're showing them that you thought about them. Oh, you came in a wheelchair. I already have things done for you. I have scales for you. I have adaptations for you. I have a workout for you, a warm up for you. It's all done. And so it makes it a lot easier to convince these athletes and let them know that you actually care about who they are. We do it with our able-bodied athletes. And I think a lot of able-bodied coaches are missing the mark and trying to convince people of what they know, opposed to how much they care. And no one gives a shit about how much you know if they don't think that you care about them.
I love it. I think you guys just nailed it. You summed it up really well there. And again, if I owned an affiliate right now, this would be top of my list. So people can find your programming where, Stouty?
SugarWOD Marketplace.
Sugar
Right
Watt
up.
Marketplace, WheelWOD, and again, it's not,
Yeah.
don't leave this episode thinking, okay, this is only for my adaptive athletes. It's full-on programming. By the way, you know, it took people to the CrossFit Games. So it's good enough for you people out there.
And just lastly, it's not one workout. It's not like you get .com, it's one workout, go do that, and you're the coach, you show up, you get into the programming, but now you got to come up with a warm-up. No, it's warm-up. There's a focus, which yes, might be strength, but it also might be skill. It's just a focus. There's a workout and there's recovery and a cool down, all intentional. So it gives you your whole hour. Now you can be your own coach and personality and create your setting in your 1 hour that is unique to you, but set your framework up. Now you get to be a better coach. You get to be more thoughtful. You don't have to worry about the little things. And I think that's really powerful.
Absolutely. Well, this was amazing, guys. As always, I appreciate your candor and your openness to discuss this. And you guys are changing the world, Stouty. And you got a lot on your shoulders, and now you got a 17th division that you need to consider. Definitely moving the target down and potentially adjusting the rower. I'm going to throw out there, like make the rower a little more advantageous for the shorter people.
You're talking about putting blocks on the pedals like you do on your car.
Yeah, blocks on the pedals and then lower boxes. 20-point box jumps is nonsense. So, but this is really great. You guys are the best, and you can obviously find WheelWOD on SugarWOD. And if somebody just wanted to reach out, can you guys just quickly throw out the best way for somebody to get in touch with each of you? I mean, John, you're on Tinder, and then Kevin, where's everybody? Where's everybody else?
So you can get everybody at wheelwod.com.
All right, wheelwod.com. Easy enough. Let's leave it there because we got some creepy listeners and they're gonna be chasing after you guys. So we'll leave it at that. Check out wheelwod.com for everything you need. You guys are the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Appreciate it.